Elena's feet were killing her. She'd been on them for 9 hours straight at Sal's Diner on the Lower East Side, serving bottomless coffee to truck drivers and scrambled eggs to insomniacs who couldn't tell 3 a.m. and from 3 p.m. anymore. Her lower back screamed with every step. The cheap orthopedic insoles she'd bought from the drugstore had given up somewhere around hour 6, but the shift was almost over. Just 20 more minutes and she could limp the 4 blocks home to her studio apartment, where the radiator clanged like a dying car and the bathroom ceiling leaked every time her upstairs neighbor showered. Home sweet home. The diner's bell chimed as another customer left. Elena wiped down the vacated booth with mechanical efficiency, her mind already on the bills stacked on her kitchen table. Electric was due in 3 days, rent in 8. She'd picked up an extra shift this week, but it still wouldn't be enough. It was never enough. "Elena, you're cut," Sal called from behind the counter. "If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you." His weathered face creasing into something almost apologetic. "Slow night. Can't justify keeping you on the clock. 20 minutes early meant 20 minutes less pay." Elena swallowed her frustration and untied her apron. "Sure, Sal. See you tomorrow." The November air bit through her thin jacket as she stepped onto the sidewalk. 9:43 p.m. And the city was humming with its usual chaos. Car horns, distant sirens, the rumble of the subway beneath her feet. Elena pulled her jacket tighter and started walking. She'd made it half a block when she heard it. "Stop! Someone stop her!" The voice was young, desperate, cutting through the street noise like a knife. Elena turned automatically, searching for the source. On the opposite sidewalk, outside a high-end Italian restaurant with warm light spilling from its windows, a little girl sat in a wheelchair. She couldn't have been more than 10 years old, with dark curls framing a delicate face twisted in panic. Her hands clutched the armrests of an empty wheelchair beside her. "No, not empty. Missing. She took my sister's chair," the girl screamed, pointing down the street. "Please, somebody help." Elena followed the gesture and saw her. A woman in a stained hoodie, sprinting away with a wheelchair bouncing awkwardly in her grip. The chrome frame glinted under the streetlights as she ran, weaving between pedestrians who barely glanced her way. New York, where people stole wheelchairs in broad moonlight and nobody batted an eye. Elena looked at the little girl. Tears streamed down her face now, her whole body shaking with sobs. Around her, well-dressed patrons from the restaurant had emerged, forming a useless circle. They stared, whispered, pulled out phones. But nobody moved. "Someone should call the police," a woman in pearls murmured. "Terrible, just terrible." A man in an expensive suit agreed, shaking his head. The girl's sobs grew louder, more desperate. Elena's feet hurt. She was exhausted. This wasn't her problem. She had her own mountain of problems waiting at home. But she was already running. Her tired legs found a burst of energy she didn't know she had. The wheelchair thief had maybe a 20-second head start, but she was struggling with her stolen prize. The chair was bulky, heavy, designed for a child but still awkward to maneuver at speed. Elena's sneakers pounded against the pavement, her lungs burned. She dodged a group of tourists, nearly collided with a delivery guy on a bike, kept running. The thief glanced back, saw Elena gaining, and tried to run faster. But the wheelchair caught on a newspaper box, spinning her sideways. She stumbled, regained her balance, kept going. Elena was closing the distance. 10 feet. 8. 6. They'd covered 2 blocks now. The thief darted into an alley, clearly hoping to lose her pursuer in the maze of narrow passages that crisscrossed this part of the city. Bad choice. Elena had grown up here. She knew these alleys. The space was tight, cluttered with dumpsters and fire escapes, and the accumulated debris of urban life. The thief was slowing down, the wheelchair's wheels catching on everything. "Stop!" Elena shouted, her voice ragged. "Just stop and give it back." The woman whirled around, her face gaunt and desperate under the alley's dim light. "Back off. This is worth money. I need. It's a kid's wheelchair." Elena kept advancing, hands out like she was approaching a cornered animal. "There's a little girl crying on the street because you took it. Not my problem." But the woman's voice wavered. Guilt, maybe, or just fear of getting caught. They were at a standoff. The alley stretched behind the thief, offering escape routes, but she'd have to abandon the wheelchair to run fast enough. Elena could see the calculation happening behind those hollow eyes. Then the decision came. The woman shoved the wheelchair toward Elena hard and took off running deeper into the alley. Elena lunged, catching the chair before it could crash into a dumpster. The metal was cold under her hands, still warm from the thief's grip. She stood there for a moment, breathing hard, her heart hammering against her ribs. She'd done it. She'd actually done it. The run back was slower. Elena pushed the wheelchair, which was heavier than it looked, and pulled slightly to the left. Her body was screaming at her now. 9 hours of work plus a 6-block sprint catching up with brutal efficiency. But she kept moving, retracing her path through the alleys and back to the main street. The crowd outside the restaurant had grown. Elena could see the little girl still in her wheelchair, surrounded by adults who seemed to be arguing about something. There were more men in suits now. Big men with the kind of alert stillness that suggested they were more than just concerned citizens. As Elena emerged from the side street, pushing the stolen wheelchair, every head turned toward her. The little girl's face transformed. "You got it! You got Sophia's chair!" Elena wheeled it over, breathing too hard to speak. Up close, she could see the wheelchair was custom. Not a standard medical supply model, but something built specifically for a child, with adjustments and modifications that spoke of serious money. "Thank you," the girl gasped, reaching out to touch the chair like she needed to confirm it was real. "Thank you so much. Sophia needs it. She can't walk and her other chair is broken and it's okay." Elena managed, her voice rough. "It's okay. I got it back." One of the suited men stepped forward, his phone pressed to his ear. He was speaking rapid Italian, his tone urgent. Elena caught fragments. "Have it, yes, the chair." Some woman chased her down. Another man, older with silver threading through dark hair, approached Elena with careful steps. Everything about him screamed authority. The cut of his suit, the way the other men deferred to him, the controlled intensity in his dark eyes. "You chased her," he said. Not a question. A statement of fact that seemed to require confirmation anyway. Elena nodded, still trying to catch her breath. 6 blocks, maybe 7. Lost count. Why? The question caught her off guard. Because someone had to? The man studied her with an intensity that made Elena's skin prickle. It was the kind of look that saw everything, catalogued everything, weighed everything. She had the sudden sensation of being a specimen under a microscope. "Antonio," the man said quietly, not breaking eye contact with Elena. "Give Miss." He paused. Waiting. Elena Rossi. Give Miss Rossi $5,000. Elena's brain stuttered to a halt. What? One of the suited men was already reaching for a wallet, pulling out a stack of bills that looked obscene in its thickness. "No," Elena said quickly, raising her hands. "No, I don't want money. I was just helping." The man's eyebrows rose slightly. Around them, Elena felt the shift in the crowd. The suited men exchanged glances. Even the little girl looked surprised. "You don't want payment," the man said slowly, "for chasing down a thief and recovering a $20,000 custom wheelchair." 20,000, Elena's mind reeled. That chair was worth more than she made in half a year. "I just wanted to help the kid," Elena said, her voice firmer now despite her exhaustion. She was crying. Nobody else was doing anything. "So I did." The man was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice had changed. Softer, more thoughtful. "What's your name again?" "Elena Rossi, Italian. 3rd generation. My great-grandparents came from Calabria." Something flickered in the man's eyes. Recognition, maybe, or calculation. "I'm Marco DeLuca," he said, extending a hand. "This is my daughter, Lucia, and the wheelchair you recovered belongs to my other daughter, Sophia." Elena shook his hand, noting the calluses despite the expensive suit. This was a man who'd worked with his hands at some point in his life, even if he didn't anymore. "Where is Sophia?" "Inside, finishing dinner. She wanted to stay with Lucia while we figured out." Marco gestured vaguely at the chaos of the moment. This situation. As if summoned, the restaurant door opened. A man in a wheelchair emerged, guiding a little girl in an identical chair to Lucia's. But where Lucia was animated and bright, this girl was quiet, withdrawn. Her dark hair fell around a pale face, and her hands gripped the armrests with white-knuckled intensity. "Sophia," Lucia called out. "She got your other chair back." The lady chased the bad person and got it back. Sophia's head lifted. Her eyes found the recovered wheelchair, then traveled to Elena. For a moment their gazes locked, and Elena saw something there. Relief, yes, but also a bone-deep weariness that no 10-year-old should possess. "Thank you," Sophia said quietly. Her voice was barely audible over the street noise. Elena crouched down, bringing herself to the girl's eye level. "You're welcome. I'm sorry someone took it in the first place." "People take things," Sophia said matter-of-factly, like she'd learned this lesson early and hard. "Dad says the world isn't always kind." "Maybe not," Elena agreed. "But that doesn't mean we can't be." Sophia stared at her, and something shifted in that solemn little face. The ghost of a smile, perhaps, or just the faint loosening of that terrible tension. Marco DeLuca was watching this exchange with laser focus. When Elena stood, he spoke again. "Miss Rossi, please allow me to at least cover your cab fare home, or a car service. It's late." Elena glanced at her watch. 10:18. She'd spent 35 minutes chasing wheelchairs through Manhattan. "I only live 4 blocks from here, but thank you." 4 blocks? Marco repeated. "You live in this neighborhood, born and raised, and you work." His eyes flicked to her uniform, partially visible under her jacket. "In food service." It wasn't a question, but Elena nodded anyway. "Sal's Diner, night shift mostly." Marco pulled out a business card from his inner pocket. Heavy cardstock. Embossed lettering. He handed it to Elena. "If you ever need anything, Miss Rossi, you call that number, day or night. Consider it a standing offer." Elena took the card, mostly to be polite. She glanced at it. "Marco DeLuca, import, export. A phone number, nothing else. I really don't need." "I insist." There was steel under the courtesy now. "You did my family a service tonight. One we won't forget." Something in his tone made Elena's spine straighten. This wasn't just a grateful father. This was something else. Something more complicated. She pocketed the card. "Okay. Thank you. Antonio will walk you home. Make sure you get there safely." "That's really not 4 blocks," Marco said gently but firmly. "It's late. Humor me." Elena looked at the massive man called Antonio, who was clearly some kind of bodyguard or security. Then back at Marco DeLuca, with his calculating eyes and expensive suit and daughters who owned $20,000 wheelchairs. "Okay," she said finally, too tired to argue. Lucia wheeled forward suddenly, grabbing Elena's hand. "Will we see you again?" "Lucia," Marco said, a note of warning in his voice. "I want to see her again," Lucia insisted. "She's nice. She helped Sophia, not like those other people who just stood around." Elena squeezed the girl's hand gently. "Maybe. It's a small neighborhood. Promise?" Elena couldn't help but smile at the earnestness in those young eyes. "I promise if I see you around, I'll say hi." "How's that?" Lucia beamed. "Good." As Antonio walked Elena home, maintaining a respectful distance but staying close enough to intercept any threats, she found herself thinking about Marco DeLuca's card in her pocket. Import, export. Right, and she was the Queen of England. She'd lived in New York long enough to recognize the signs, the suited guards, the expensive everything. The way people in the restaurant had backed away when Marco approached. The casual offer of $5,000, like it was pocket change. Marco DeLuca wasn't just a businessman. He was something else entirely. And Elena, who'd only wanted to help a crying child, had just walked straight into his world. Antonio left her at her building's entrance with a polite nod. Elena climbed the 3 flights to her apartment, every step a reminder of her exhausted body. Inside, she dropped her jacket on the chair, kicked off her shoes, and collapsed onto her lumpy couch. The business card fell out of her pocket. She picked it up, turning it over in her hands. Just a phone number, a name, a promise she'd probably never need to collect on. Elena set it on the coffee table and closed her eyes. Tomorrow she had the day shift, 6 a.m., start. She needed sleep, but sleep didn't come easily. Her mind kept replaying the evening, the little girl's desperate cry, the chase, the wheelchair, Marco DeLuca's penetrating gaze. "You did my family a service tonight, one we won't forget." Elena pulled a pillow over her face and groaned. She'd just wanted to help a kid. Why did it feel like she'd stepped into something much bigger? Across town, in a penthouse overlooking Central Park, Marco DeLuca stood at his window with a glass of whiskey, untouched. "The background check is running now," Antonio reported from behind him. "Should have complete information by morning. And preliminary sweep shows she's clean. Elena Marie Rossi, 28 years old. Works at Sal's Diner. Has for 3 years. Before that, 2 other restaurants. Parents died in a car accident when she was 22. No siblings. No criminal record. Not even a parking ticket. She volunteers at a community center teaching kids to read. Marco took a sip of his whiskey. Debt? Medical bills from her parents' accident. She's been paying them down slowly. Current balance is around $43,000. Credit score is decent considering her income. She's never missed a payment, just minimum amounts. $43,000 in debt, working night shifts at a diner, living in a fourth-floor walk-up in a building that should probably be condemned. And she'd turned down $5,000 without hesitation. Keep looking, Marco said quietly. I want to know everything. Who her friends are, where she shops, what she does on her days off. Everything. Boss, she's just a waitress who helped Lucia and Sofia. Nobody is just anything, Antonio. Marco turned from the window. She chased a thief for 6 blocks to recover a wheelchair for children she'd never met. No hesitation, no expectation of reward. In my experience, people like that are either saints or they're running a very long con. And if she's a saint? Marco smiled, but there was no humor in it. Then, she's in danger, because everybody I've ever cared about becomes a target eventually. He walked to his desk, pulling up security footage on his computer. The restaurant had cameras facing the street. He scrolled through until he found the moment. There, Elena Rossi, looking exhausted in her diner uniform, stopping mid-stride when she heard Lucia's cry. Her face, caught in the streetlight, showed the internal debate. Every tired line of her body said she wanted to go home, but her feet had turned toward the problem anyway. Marco watched her take off running, watched her disappear around the corner in pursuit, watched her return 8 minutes later, pushing the wheelchair, her face flushed with exertion. He watched the moment she'd crouched down to talk to Sofia, the gentleness in her posture, the way Sofia had actually smiled, a real smile, not the polite mask she wore for strangers. His daughters had been through hell. Lucia's genetic condition, Sofia's accident 2 years ago that left her paralyzed from the waist down, his wife's death from cancer the year after that. They'd learned young that the world was cruel, that safety was an illusion, that trust was dangerous. But tonight, Sofia had smiled at a stranger. Lucia had asked to see her again. And Elena Rossi had chased a thief through Manhattan to help 2 girls she didn't know. Marco closed the laptop and finished his whiskey. Double the detail on my daughters, he said. Starting tomorrow. Already done. And put someone on Miss Rossi. Discreet. Antonio hesitated. Boss, I'm not ready to let her walk away yet, Antonio. Not until I understand what just happened tonight. What did happen tonight? Marco thought about his daughters' faces, about Elena's refusal of money, about the way she'd spoken to Sofia, like she was a person, not a tragedy. I don't know yet, he admitted, but I'm going to find out. After Antonio left, Marco pulled up Elena's information on his computer. Her driver's license photo looked nothing like the woman he'd met tonight. In the photo, she looked younger, hopeful. The woman who'd returned his daughter's wheelchair had looked tired, worn down by life. $43,000 in medical debt, minimum wage plus tips, an apartment that probably cost most of her paycheck, and she'd turned down $5,000. Marco picked up his phone and texted his accountant. Need medical debt paid off. I'll send details in the morning. Anonymous payment. Make it untraceable. The response came immediately. Amount? However much it takes. He set down the phone and returned to the window. The city sprawled below him, millions of people living millions of lives. And somewhere in that chaos was Elena Rossi, probably asleep, probably unaware that she'd just changed everything. Marco De Luca had spent 20 years building an empire, protecting his family, keeping them safe from the violence and chaos of his world. He'd learned hard lessons about trust, about loyalty, about the price of caring. But watching his daughters' faces tonight, seeing that spark of real joy, real connection, it made him wonder if maybe, just maybe, there were still good people in the world. People worth protecting, people worth keeping close. His phone buzzed. A message from Sofia, who should have been asleep an hour ago. Dad, the lady who got my chair. Is she nice? Can we see her again? Marco stared at the message for a long time before responding. She's very nice, and yes, we'll see her again. Now go to sleep. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared. Then appeared again. Promise? Marco smiled despite himself. Promise, Principessa. Now sleep. He'd made a promise to his daughter. That meant he needed to keep Elena Rossi in their lives somehow, but carefully, thoughtfully, because in his world, care and danger were always intertwined. Tomorrow, he'd figure out how to make this work, how to protect his daughter's newfound connection without pulling Elena into the dark parts of his life. But tonight, he allowed himself one moment of gratitude for the exhausted waitress who'd chased a thief because a child was crying. The world wasn't always kind, but sometimes kindness found its way through anyway. And when it did, Marco DeLuca never forgot. Elena woke to 17 missed calls. She grabbed her phone from the nightstand, squinting at the screen in the early morning darkness. Unknown number. All from the same caller, starting at 6:30 a.m. It was barely 7 now. Who? The phone rang in her hand. Same unknown number. Elena answered, her voice rough with sleep. Hello? Miss Rossi, this is Antonio, Mr. DeLuca's associate. We met last night. Elena sat up, suddenly awake. Is everything okay? Are the girls? The girls are fine, but we need you to come to the residence. Now, a car is waiting outside your building. What? Why? Mr. DeLuca will explain. Please, Miss Rossi, it's important. The line went dead. Elena stared at her phone, her heart hammering. She threw off the covers and went to her window, peering down at the street. Sure enough, a black SUV sat at the curb, engine running. This was insane. She should ignore it, go back to bed, pretend last night never happened. Instead, she pulled on jeans and a sweater, splashed water on her face, and headed downstairs. The driver was a different man than Antonio, but cut from the same cloth. Big, alert, professional. He opened the rear door without a word. Elena hesitated on the sidewalk. Can you at least tell me what this is about? Security matter, ma'am. Mr. DeLuca will explain. Security matter. Those 2 words made Elena's stomach drop. But she got in the car anyway. The drive took 40 minutes, heading north out of Manhattan into Westchester County. The houses got bigger, the lots more expansive, until they turned onto a private road that wound through manicured grounds. The DeLuca estate wasn't a house. It was a compound. Stone walls, iron gates, security cameras everywhere. The main house sprawled across a hilltop like something from a movie, all elegant architecture and old money. Antonio met her at the entrance, his expression grave. Thank you for coming, Miss Rossi. Do I have a choice? Something that might have been respect flickered across his face. There's always a choice, but I'm glad you made this one. He led her through marble hallways hung with art that probably cost more than Elena's entire building. They passed staff members who nodded respectfully, guards who watched with professional assessment, until finally they reached a set of double doors. Antonio knocked once, then opened them. Marco DeLuca stood at a massive desk, looking like he hadn't slept. His suit jacket was gone, sleeves rolled up, tie loosened. 3 other men in similar states of exhaustion occupied the room, along with multiple computer screens showing what appeared to be security footage. Everyone looked up when Elena entered. Miss Rossi, Marco said, and there was relief in his voice. Thank you for coming. Please, sit. Elena remained standing. What's going on? Antonio said it was a security matter. Marco exchanged glances with the other men. Show her. One of the men, younger with sharp eyes and a computer tablet, turned the screen toward Elena. Security footage played, timestamp from last night. The restaurant, the street, her chasing the wheelchair. But the angle was wrong. This wasn't from the restaurant's cameras. This footage, the young man said, was taken from across the street. Professional surveillance equipment. Someone was watching us last night. Elena's mouth went dry. Watching you? Watching my daughters, Marco corrected, his voice hard. They've been under surveillance for at least a week, maybe longer. We only discovered it this morning when we reviewed footage after last night's incident. He nodded, and the young man pulled up more images. Different days, different angles, all featuring Lucia and Sophia. But that's not the concerning part, Marco continued. The concerning part is this. The footage jumped to last night again. Elena chasing the wheelchair. But this time, the video followed her. Down the street, into the alley, back to the restaurant. Then it followed her home. Elena felt ice flood her veins. Someone followed me? Multiple someones. Marco's jaw was tight. At least 3 different vehicles. We've identified 2 as belonging to the Castellano family. The 3rd is still unknown. I don't understand. The Castellano, rivals, Marco said simply. People who would very much like to hurt me, and who now know that you helped my daughters, that you refused payment, that you showed up on their surveillance footage acting like you care about my children. Elena sank into the chair she'd been refusing. Oh God, we've had eyes on your building since 3 a.m., Antonio said. No direct approaches yet, but they're watching, learning your patterns, figuring out if you're valuable. I'm not valuable. I'm nobody. You became somebody, Marco said quietly, the moment you chased that wheelchair. And then you became somebody important when you turned down $5,000. People in my world don't turn down money unless they want something bigger. The Castellanos are trying to figure out what you want, what your angle is. Elena's head spun. I don't have an angle. I just helped a kid. I know that, but they don't. And until they figure it out or decide you're not worth the effort, you're in danger. The room fell silent. Elena looked around at these dangerous men, at the security footage, at the evidence of a world she'd stumbled into completely by accident. So what do I do? She asked, hating how small her voice sounded. That, Marco said, is why you're here. I have two options to present to you, and I want you to understand both before you decide. He came around the desk, leaning against it, his posture open but his eyes intense. Option 1, you disappear. I relocate you. New city, new identity, new life. I cover all costs. You walk away clean, and the Castellanos eventually lose interest because you're no longer relevant. Elena's heart clenched. Leave New York? Completely. No contact with anyone from your old life. It's not ideal, but it's safe. What's option 2? Marco was quiet for a moment. Option 2 is you come here. You accept a position working for my family. Officially, we make it clear you're under my protection. The Castellanos back off because touching you would mean war. A position doing what? The girls need someone, Marco said, and his voice softened. After their mother died, we've had tutors, nannies, caregivers, but nobody they connect with, nobody they trust. Last night, Sophia texted me asking about you. That's the first time in 2 years she's expressed interest in seeing anyone. Elena thought about Sophia's solemn face, Lucia's bright enthusiasm, the way both girls had looked at her like she was something special instead of just another exhausted waitress. You want me to be their nanny. Not a nanny. More than that. A companion. Someone who sees them as people, not as the DeLuca daughters. Someone who'll chase thieves 6 blocks because it's the right thing to do. Marco's expression was unreadable. Someone who might actually give a damn. I'm not qualified. I don't have degrees or training or... You have something better. You have heart. That's what they need. That's what money can't buy. Elena stood, pacing to the window. Outside, she could see gardens stretching toward a tree line. Everything perfectly maintained. A world away from her cramped apartment and the diner's grease-stained floors. If I say yes, what does that mean? I just move in here? Private suite. Full salary, more than you make now. Your debt paid off. Elena whirled around. What? Marco had the grace to look slightly guilty. I had your situation researched. The medical bills from your parents' accident. $43,000 you've been carrying for 6 years? I can make that disappear. You researched me? Elena's voice rose. You had people digging into my life? I had to know who you were. What you might want. It's how I protect my family. By invading my privacy? By being thorough. Marco's voice hardened. Miss Rossi, I have 2 daughters whose safety is my only priority. A stranger runs into our lives performing acts of kindness, and you expect me not to investigate? In my world, that's how people get killed. Elena wanted to be angry, but she understood the logic even as it unsettled her. What did you find? That you're exactly what you appear to be. A good person trying to survive in an expensive city. No criminal history, no questionable associations. You volunteer teaching children to read. You've never missed a debt payment despite barely making rent. Marco's voice softened. You're genuine, Miss Rossi, and that's so rare in my world that I almost didn't believe it. So, you want to what? Keep me around like some kind of pet good person? I want to keep you safe. And I want my daughters to have someone in their lives who isn't there because I pay them or because they owe me loyalty. Someone who's there because they choose to be. Elena looked back out the window. She thought about her studio apartment, the diner, the endless cycle of work and exhaustion and debt. Thought about the surveillance footage of strangers following her home. Then she thought about Lucia's desperate cry for help, Sophia's rare smile, the way both girls had looked at her like she mattered. I need guarantees, Elena said finally. If I do this, I need to know exactly what I'm walking into. Fair. No lies. No half-truths. I need to know what you do, what your world is, what the actual risks are. Marco nodded slowly. I can do that. And I need autonomy. I'm not a prisoner. I can leave the estate, see friends, have a life. With security. Fine, with security. But I need freedom within the protection. Agreed. Elena turned to face him fully. And if this doesn't work out, if your daughters don't actually want me around, I walk away. No strings, no obligations. If that happens, I'll relocate you. Option 1, no questions asked. Elena took a deep breath. This was insane. She was agreeing to move into a Mafia compound, to work for a man who had people researched and paid off debts without asking, to put herself directly in the crosshairs of whoever these Castellano people were. But Sofia had smiled at her. Lucia had asked to see her again. And Elena, who'd spent 6 years alone grinding through exhaustion to pay off dead parents' medical bills, was so tired of being alone. Okay, she said. I'll try it. But we do this as a trial period. 3 months. See if it actually works. Marco extended his hand. 3 months. Starting now. They shook, and Elena felt the world shift beneath her feet. Antonio will help you collect your things from your end. Apartment, Marco said. I've already had your landlord notified that you're terminating your lease. 3 months' rent as penalty, paid in full. You already, how did you know I'd say yes? A ghost of a smile crossed Marco's face. I didn't, but I've learned to plan for the best outcome while preparing for the worst. That's a very political way of saying you're controlling. I prefer thorough. Antonio? Sir, take Miss Rossi to the East Wing, the blue suite. Have Maria prepare it. Already done, sir. Of course it was. Elena had a feeling everything in Marco De Luca's world moved 3 steps ahead of reality. As Antonio led her away, Marco called out, Miss Rossi? She turned. My daughters are having breakfast in the garden room in an hour. I thought you might want to join them. Tell them yourself about the arrangement. Elena's stomach fluttered with nerves. And if they don't want me here? Then I'll know within the first 5 minutes, and we'll revisit our agreement. His expression was unreadable. But I don't think that's going to be a problem. The blue suite was larger than Elena's entire apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the gardens, a 4-poster bed that could sleep 6 people, a bathroom with a tub big enough to swim in, and a shower with multiple heads that looked like something from a spa. Maria, the head housekeeper, was a small woman in her 60s, with kind eyes and an efficient manner. She'd already laid out fresh towels and toiletries. Mr. De Luca said you'll need to collect your belongings, Maria said in accented English. Antonio will take you whenever you're ready, but perhaps you'd like to freshen up first? The young ladies are very excited about breakfast. They know I'm here? Mr. De Luca told them this morning. I haven't seen Miss Lucia so animated in months. Maria smiled. Miss Sophia was quieter about it, but she picked out the flowers for your room herself, the gardenias. She said they smell like kindness. Elena's throat tightened. She looked at the vase on the dresser, white gardenias perfect and fragrant. A 10-year-old girl who'd been paralyzed in an accident, who'd watched her mother die, who lived in a world of violence and danger. That girl had picked flowers for her. I'll freshen up quickly, Elena managed. 30 minutes later, wearing the same jeans and sweater because she had nothing else, Elena followed Maria through the mansion to the garden room. It was a conservatory-style space, with glass walls on 3 sides, filled with plants and natural light. A table was set for breakfast, and there, in their wheelchairs at either end, sat Lucia and Sophia. Lucia saw her first. Elena, you came. Dad said you were coming, but I wasn't sure if he meant right now or later or... Lucia, breathe, Sophia said softly, but she was smiling. Actually smiling. Elena approached the table, suddenly nervous. Hi, your dad told you about his offer? That you're going to stay with us. Lucia practically bounced in her wheelchair. That you're going to be our friend and live here and we can see you every day instead of just maybe sometime if we're lucky in the neighborhood. We know it's Father's idea, Sophia said, more measured. And we know you might not want to stay, but we hope you do. Elena pulled out a chair and sat, bringing herself level with the girls. I want to be honest with you both. I'm not trained for this. I'm not a teacher or a nanny or anything official. I'm just a waitress who chased a wheelchair. You chased it for 6 blocks, Lucia said proudly. Dad said you ran so fast his men couldn't keep up. I'm also new to your dad's world. The security, Elena struggled for words. The complicated parts. I'm going to make mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes, Sophia said quietly. It's okay. But if you two don't want me here, If this feels weird or uncomfortable, you tell me. Or tell your dad. This only works if you actually want it to work." The girls exchanged glances, some silent communication passing between them. "Can I ask you something?" Sophia's voice was serious. "Anything. Why did you chase the wheelchair?" "Really? Dad says people don't usually help, especially in New York." "So why did you?" Elena thought about it. "Because you were crying," she said finally. "And everybody else was just standing around like it wasn't their problem. But it felt like my problem. Like if I didn't do something, nobody would, and that wasn't okay." Sophia studied her with eyes that seemed far too old for her face. "You didn't know who we were." "No. You didn't know our father could pay you or protect you or do anything for you. I didn't even know you had a father. I just knew a kid was scared and needed help. That's why we want you here," Sophia said simply. "Because you saw us as people first. Not as father's daughters or as girls in wheelchairs or as problems to be managed. Just as people who needed help." Lucia nodded, vigorously. "Everyone treats us like we're going to break. Or like we're scary because of Dad. But you just chased the wheelchair because it needed chasing." Elena felt something crack open in her chest. "Then I'll stay. For the 3-month trial. And we'll figure this out together." "Together," Lucia agreed, reaching across the table. Elena took her hand, and then Sophia's, and the three of them sat there for a moment, an unlikely trio forming an even unlikelier bond. Maria appeared with breakfast pastries and fruit and coffee that smelled like heaven. As they ate, Lucia chattered about her favorite books and her physical therapy, and the new piano she was learning. Sophia was quieter, but she watched Elena with thoughtful attention, occasionally asking questions about the diner or Elena's life before this. They were smart girls, observant. They'd learned to read people the way Elena had learned to read difficult customers, looking for the truth beneath the surface. "What happened? To your mom?" Elena asked gently, when Lucia mentioned her in passing. The brightness dimmed from Lucia's face. Sophia's hand tightened on her fork. "Cancer," Sophia said quietly. 3 years ago. She was sick for a long time, and then she wasn't here anymore. I'm sorry. I lost my parents too. Car accident. Elena paused. "It's really hard." "Did you get used to it?" Lucia asked, her voice small. "The empty space where they used to be?" Elena chose her words carefully. "You get used to living with it. It doesn't go away, but it gets easier to carry. And sometimes you find new people who help fill some of the empty spaces." "Is that what you're doing here?" Sophia asked. "Filling empty spaces?" "Maybe," Elena admitted. "Or maybe I'm letting you fill some of mine." They finished breakfast, and then Lucia insisted on showing Elena the library. "We have 12,000 books," she announced proudly. I counted with the librarian. "Well, she counted." I pointed. The library was stunning 2 stories of floor-to-ceiling shelves, rolling ladders, comfortable reading nooks with windows overlooking the grounds. "Do you like to read?" Sophia asked, navigating her wheelchair expertly between shelves. "I love to read. I used to volunteer at the community center, teaching kids. Could you read to us sometimes?" Lucia asked. "The tutors do, but they make everything sound boring. Like they're reading the phone book instead of a story. I'd love to." They spent the morning there. Elena reading from Lucia's current favorite, a fantasy series about dragons. Sophia sat quietly, her eyes closed, but Elena could tell she was listening by the small smile that appeared during the funny parts. Around noon, Antonio appeared in the doorway. "Miss Rossi, we should collect your belongings. Mr. DeLuca would like you settled by evening. Can we come?" Lucia asked immediately. "Absolutely not," Antonio said, but his voice was gentle. "Security protocols. We never get to go anywhere," Lucia grumbled, but without real heat. This was clearly a long-standing argument. "I'll be back soon," Elena promised. "And then maybe this afternoon we could explore the gardens? If that's okay with your dad?" "The gardens are safe," Sophia said. "We can take you to the pond. There are fish." If you're hooked on this story, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Your support means everything and helps me bring you more emotional stories like this one. As Elena followed Antonio out, she heard Lucia whisper to her sister, "I like her. She doesn't use her fake voice." "What's a fake voice?" Sophia whispered back. "You know, when adults talk to us like we're babies or stupid, she talks like we're real people." Elena smiled despite the strangeness of everything. She'd been at the estate for 4 hours and already the girls were imprinting on her. Or maybe she was imprinting on them. The drive back to her apartment felt surreal. Elena directed Antonio to her building, suddenly embarrassed by the peeling paint and broken intercom. If Antonio noticed, he didn't comment. He simply followed her up 3 flights of stairs, his presence making the narrow hallway feel even smaller. Elena's studio looked even more depressing than usual. The water-stained ceiling, the radiator that clanged, the Murphy bed that stuck halfway. This had been her life for 3 years. Home. Take what you need, Antonio said. Personal items, clothing, photographs. Furniture can be donated or stored. Elena looked around. She didn't have much. Clothes that fit in 2 suitcases, books that filled 3 boxes, photos of her parents, her grandmother, happier times before the accident, and the debt, and the grinding exhaustion. That's it? Antonio asked when she'd finished packing. That's it. He studied her for a moment. Most people have more. Most people have more money to buy more stuff. Elena zipped the last suitcase. I've been living light since my parents died. Easier to move if you need to. You won't need to move again, Antonio said with quiet certainty. Mr. DeLuca protects what's his. I'm not his. I work for him. There's a difference. To you, maybe. To him, once your family, your family. There's no halfway with Marco DeLuca. Elena thought about that as they carried her belongings down to the SUV. She'd agreed to 3 months, a trial period. But Antonio's words suggested Marco saw it differently. Once you're in, you're in. She pushed the thought aside. 3 months. She'd give it 3 months, and then she'd reassess. She wasn't trapped. She was just helping some kids who needed help. That was all. But as they drove back to Westchester, passing through increasingly wealthy neighborhoods until they reached the gated estate, Elena couldn't shake the feeling that she'd just crossed a threshold that didn't have a reverse. The blue suite felt more real with her belongings in it. Photos on the dresser, books on the shelf, her mother's worn cardigan draped over a chair. Small pieces of her old life transplanted into this new, strange, dangerous world. Maria had left dinner on a tray roasted chicken, and vegetables that looked like something from a restaurant, not a microwave. Elena ate alone, looking out at the gardens as the sun set. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She answered cautiously. Hello? Elena? It's Sal, from the diner. Sal, hi. I was going to call you tomorrow about some guys came by today. Asking about you. Where you lived, what shifts you worked, if you had a boyfriend. Sal's voice was tight with worry. Elena, what's going on? Are you in trouble? Elena's stomach dropped. The Castellanos were moving faster than Marco had anticipated. I'm okay, Sal. I promise. But I'm not coming back to the diner. I've taken another position. Elena, I can't explain right now. But I'm safe. I'm sorry for not giving notice. You can keep my last paycheck to cover it. Silence. Then, these men, Elena, they weren't cops. They were, I know what they were, and I'm handling it. Thank you for calling to warn me. She hung up before he could ask more questions. Her hands were shaking. A knock at her door. Elena opened it to find Marco, still in his work clothes, his expression concerned. Antonio said you had a call. Who was it? My old boss. Men came by the diner asking about me. Marco's jaw tightened. Castellanos? He didn't say. But they sound like the people from your security footage. I'll handle it. Marco pulled out his phone, already typing. I should have had people there. That was an oversight. You can't protect everywhere I've ever been. I can try. He looked up from his phone, his expression softer. How are you settling in? The girls said you spent the morning with them. They're great, smart, funny, a little lonely. That's why you're here. Elena leaned against the doorframe. Can I ask you something? Why are they in wheelchairs? Lucia mentioned a genetic condition. Marco was quiet for a moment. Lucia was born with spinal muscular atrophy, genetic disease that affects motor neurons. She'll never walk, but she's otherwise healthy, active, happy, despite everything. And Sophia? Marco's expression darkened. 2 years ago, there was an attack. Someone tried to get to me through my family. There was a car accident. My wife died instantly. Sophia survived, but her spine was damaged. She's been paralyzed from the waist down ever since. Elena's heart clenched. I'm so sorry. It's why I'm so careful now. Why security is non-negotiable. I failed to protect them once. I won't fail again. The weight of his guilt was palpable. Elena understood it intimately, survivor's guilt. The bone-deep certainty that you should have done more, been better, prevented the unpredictable. It wasn't your fault, she said quietly. The accident. Your wife. Sophia's injury. You can't control everything. I can try. The same words he'd used about protection. Marco DeLuca's operating principle. Try to control everything. Protect everyone. Never let chaos win. It would be exhausting to live that way. The girls are. Happy you're here, Marco said, changing the subject. Lucia talked about you through lunch. Sophia asked if you'd read to them again tomorrow. I will. They're easy to care about. I know. Marco's voice was soft. That's why I need you to understand something, Elena. People who care about my daughters become targets. Not because of anything they do, but because of what I do. The Castellanos are just the beginning. There are other families, other enemies. If you stay, you'll be painted with the DeLuca brush. You'll be seen as ours. Antonio said something similar, that there's no halfway with you. There isn't. In my world, loyalty is absolute or it's worthless. If you're going to be in my daughters' lives, you're going to be protected like family. But that also means you'll be treated like family by my enemies. Elena met his gaze. And what do you get out of this? Beyond happy daughters? Marco smiled slightly. Isn't that enough? I'm a father first. Everything else is secondary. You're also a businessman. A powerful one. People don't get powerful by being purely altruistic. You're right. I do get something. Marco's expression turned serious. I get to know that when I'm handling business, when I'm dealing with threats, when I'm managing the 100 crises that come with my life, my daughters are with someone who'll chase wheelchairs 6 blocks, someone who'll put their safety before her own comfort. That's worth more than money can buy. Elena understood. She was his safety net, his insurance policy, the person he trusted to care when he couldn't be there. It was a lot of responsibility, but looking at it from his perspective, a single father of 2 disabled girls, living in constant danger, having lost his wife to violence, she understood why he'd moved so fast to secure her agreement. 3 months, she said. We'll see how it goes. 3 months, Marco agreed. But Elena? I don't think you'll want to leave when the time comes. After he left, Elena stood at her window, looking out over the estate grounds. Somewhere beyond those walls, dangerous men were watching, waiting, trying to figure out what she meant to Marco DeLuca. She'd chased a wheelchair. That was all. One instinctive act of kindness, and it had rewritten her entire life. Elena pulled out her phone and looked at her banking app. A text notification caught her eye. Payment received, $43,127.89. Debt balance, $0. Her medical debt, gone, paid off completely. Marco had done it without asking, without waiting for permission. Elena should have been angry. It was invasive, controlling, presumptuous. But instead, she felt the weight of 6 years lift off her shoulders. 6 years of minimum payments and interest, and the constant gnawing fear that one emergency would bury her completely. Gone. She sat on her bed and, for the first time since her parents died, cried from relief instead of exhaustion. In his study, Marco watched the security feeds from Elena's suite. He saw her check her phone, saw her reaction to the debt payment, saw her break down. You think that was the right move? Antonio asked from behind him. She would never have accepted if I'd asked. Too proud. She's going to be angry. Probably. But she's also going to stay. Marco closed the laptop. Because despite what she thinks, she wants to be here. She wants to care about someone again. She's been alone too long. You're playing chess with people's lives, boss. I'm protecting my daughters. Everything else is secondary. Antonio was quiet for a moment. What if she does leave after 3 months? She won't. How can you be sure? Marco thought about Elena's face when she'd spoken to Sophia and Lucia. The genuine warmth, the easy affection. Because they need her, and she needs them. And people who need each other tend to find ways to stay together. He hoped he was right, because Marco DeLuca had been alone for 3 years, managing crisis after crisis, protecting his daughters from a world that wanted to hurt them, and for the first time since Maria died, he felt like maybe, just maybe, he didn't have to carry it all alone anymore. 3 weeks passed like a dream. Elena fell into a rhythm at the DeLuca estate that felt more natural than anything in her old life. Mornings with the girls, breakfast in the garden room, lessons with their tutors that Elena sometimes joined, listening and learning. Afternoons in the library or the gardens, reading aloud while Lucia acted out dramatic scenes, and Sophia smiled her rare, precious smiles. Evenings were quieter. The girls had physical therapy, dinner with their father when his schedule allowed. Then bedtime routines that Elena had been slowly integrated into. Reading one more chapter, checking under beds for monsters at Lucia's request, even though they both knew it was silly. Sitting with Sophia when nightmares about the accident woke her up. Elena had never been a mother, had never particularly wanted children. But this caring for these two smart, resilient girls who'd been through hell and still found ways to laugh, this felt right. Marco watched it all with careful attention. He was respectful, keeping his distance, letting Elena establish her relationship with his daughters without interference. But she felt his presence always, saw him in doorways sometimes, observing, caught his expression when Lucia laughed at one of Elena's terrible jokes, something soft and grateful and almost painful. He was a good father, strict but loving, present despite running what Elena now understood was a massive criminal organization. He never discussed business in front of the girls, never brought violence into their safe spaces, but Elena knew it was there. Saw it in the guards who patrolled constantly, heard it in the tense phone calls Marco took in his study, felt it in the way Antonio briefed her weekly on security protocols. The Castellanos were still watching, waiting for an opening. "They're getting impatient," Antonio told her during one briefing, "making inquiries, testing boundaries." "Testing how?" "Approaching people you used to know, your old co-workers, neighbors, trying to build a profile, figure out if you're leverage or just someone who got lucky." Elena thought about Sal, about Beth from the diner, about the elderly couple who'd lived next door in her building. Are they in danger? Mr. DeLuca has people watching them, discreet protection. Nobody will be touched. It should have reassured her. Instead, it highlighted how many people had been pulled into orbit around her simple act of kindness. On a Thursday afternoon, everything changed. Elena was in the library with the girls. Lucia was practicing her piano. The library had a baby grand in one corner, while Sophia and Elena worked on a puzzle. It was peaceful, easy, normal. Then Marco burst through the door, Antonio and 3 other guards behind him. The energy in the room shifted instantly. Dangerous. Alert. "Girls, go with Maria, now." Marco's voice was controlled but urgent. "Papa?" Lucia stopped playing. "What's wrong?" "Now, Lucia." Maria appeared as if summoned, her face pale. She took control of both wheelchairs without a word, ushering the girls out quickly. Sophia looked back at Elena, frightened. "It's okay," Elena called, not knowing if it was true. When the door closed, Marco turned to her. "We have a situation. The Castellanos just made a move." Elena's stomach dropped. "What kind of move?" "They took Beth Santos, your friend from the diner." The world tilted. "What? When?" 30 minutes ago. Grabbed her outside her apartment. We have surveillance footage." Marco pulled out his phone, showing her a video. Beth leaving her building, 2 men appearing from a van, grabbing her arms, forcing her inside. Gone in 15 seconds. Elena's hands shook. "Why? She has nothing to do with this. They're sending a message. They want to meet. I want to discuss your relationship with my family." Marco's jaw was tight. "They're using Beth as bait." "Then let's go. Let's meet them. Give them whatever they want. Elena, she's my friend. She's only in danger because of me." Elena was on her feet now, fury and fear warring in her chest. "We can't just leave her with them." "I'm not planning to." Marco's voice was hard. "But we do this smart. They want a meeting at midnight. Neutral ground. Red Hook Warehouse District. They say bring you, or Beth pays the price. Then I'm going." "Absolutely not." Marco's tone brooked no argument. "This is a trap. They want you. Once they have you, Beth becomes expendable. And if I don't go, Beth dies anyway. I have people working on locating where they're actually holding her. The meeting is a distraction. They want us focused on Red Hook, while they solidify their position elsewhere." Antonio stepped forward. "Boss, we have a lead." Carlos traced the van to a property in Queens. Abandoned. "Factory. We're getting thermal imaging now." Marco nodded, then looked at Elena. "I will get your friend back, but you stay here. Non-negotiable." "The hell it is." Elena faced him down, despite his obvious power and authority. "Beth is in danger because I chased a wheelchair, because I got involved in your world. I'm not hiding in a mansion while she pays for my choices. Your presence endangers the mission. My presence is what they want. Use that. Use me as a distraction while you get her out. Too risky." "For who? Me? I'm already at risk. Beth is at risk. Your daughters could be at risk if the Castellanos decide they want more leverage. When does it end, Marco?" They stared at each other. Elena saw the conflict in his eyes. He wanted to protect her, lock her away, keep her safe, but he also understood her logic. Antonio cleared his throat. She has a point, boss. If we show up at Red Hook without her, they might execute the friend out of spite. But if she's there, visible, it keeps their attention focused while the extraction team moves on the Queen's location. You're seriously considering this? Marco's voice rose slightly. Putting her in the middle of a hostile meeting with the Castellano family? I'm considering using every asset we have to get an innocent woman back safely. Antonio met his boss's gaze steadily. Elena's right. This is on us. We brought her into this world. We protect her, yes, but we also respect her choice to fight for her people. Marco turned away, his hand running through his hair in a rare gesture of frustration. When he turned back, his expression was resolved but unhappy. Fine, but you follow every order I give. No improvisation, no heroics. You stay behind me at all times. Agreed. And if I say run, you run. No argument. Okay, I mean it, Elena. The second I sense this going wrong, Antonio gets you out. I don't care if Beth is still inside. I don't care if the whole operation falls apart. You live, that's the priority. Elena understood what he was really saying. He couldn't lose someone else, couldn't watch another person under his protection die because he made the wrong call. I'll be careful, she promised, but we're getting Beth out. The next 8 hours were preparation. Antonio fitted Elena with a vest thin, lightweight, bullet-resistant, explained where the exits were in the warehouse district, gave her a phone with a panic button that would bring the full force of DeLuca security down on her location. Marco was distant during the preparations. He coordinated his teams with military precision, but he wouldn't look at Elena directly. Finally, an hour before they had to leave, she found him in his study. He stood at the window, staring out at the dark gardens. You're angry with me, Elena said. I'm angry with myself. Marco didn't turn around. For letting you get close. For thinking I could keep you separate from this life. For failing to predict the Castellanos would move on, save your people instead of you directly. You can't predict everything. I should have. It's what I do. He finally turned, and his expression was raw. Maria died because I didn't see an attack coming. Sophia was paralyzed because I failed to protect her. And now your friend is in a warehouse in Queens because you had the misfortune of helping my daughters. Elena crossed to him. Beth is in Queens because bad people made bad choices. Not because of you. Not because of me. We're doing everything we can to fix it. By putting you at risk. I'm already at risk. Have been since the moment I chased that wheelchair. Elena held his gaze. I'm choosing this, Marco. I'm choosing to fight for Beth the same way I chose to chase that thief. Nobody's forcing me. You don't understand what you're walking into. Then explain it to me. Marco was quiet for a long moment. The Castellanos aren't just criminals. They're brutal. They make statements. If they think you're valuable to me, they'll hurt you in ways designed to cause maximum damage. Not just physical, psychological. They'll break you down until there's nothing left. Good thing I'm tougher than I look. Elena, I've spent 6 years carrying debt from parents who died too young. I've worked jobs that destroy your body and your spirit. I've lived alone in a city that doesn't care if you disappear. Elena's voice was steady. Elena's voice was steady. I'm not some fragile flower who's going to shatter the first time things get hard. I'm choosing to stand up. Let me. Marco studied her face, seeing something there that made his expression soften. You're extraordinary. You know that? The words hung between them. Elena felt heat rise to her cheeks. I'm just stubborn. That too. Marco smiled slightly. Then his expression sobered. If anything happens to you tonight, nothing's going to happen. If it does, I need you to know. He paused, searching for words. My daughters love you. In 3 weeks, you've become essential to their happiness. If you're taken from them, it will destroy them. Then we'll make sure I'm not taken from them. Marco reached out, his hand hovering near her face, then dropping. We should go. The teams are ready. As they walked to the garage, Elena realized what he'd really been saying. It wasn't just his daughters who'd become attached. Marco DeLuca, the powerful crime boss who controlled half of New York, was terrified of losing her. The warehouse district in Red Hook was exactly what Elena expected. Abandoned buildings, dark water, the smell of rust and salt air. 2 vehicles, Marco's SUV and a backup, pulled up to the designated location at 11:58 p.m. Marco had 15 men with him. All armed, all professional, they spread out in formation, establishing a perimeter. Elena stood beside Marco, her heart hammering. The vest was heavy under her jacket. The panic button in her pocket felt like a lifeline and an admission of danger all at once. At midnight exactly, lights flicked on in the warehouse ahead. The large cargo door began to roll up with a grinding screech. "Showtime," Antonio murmured. 4 men emerged, then 6, then 10. All armed, all wearing the kind of casual confidence that came from knowing you had the upper hand. One man walked ahead of the others. Older, maybe 60, with white hair and a face like weathered stone. He wore an expensive suit despite the warehouse setting. "DeLuca," he called out, prompt as always. "Castellano." Marco's voice was ice. "You have something that belongs to me." "Do I?" The man smiled. "I have a woman named Beth Santos, waitress, friend of your new pet." His eyes found Elena. "This must be her, the wheelchair chaser. You don't look like much." "Where's Beth?" Elena demanded, ignoring the insult. "Safe. For now. That depends on how this conversation goes. You want to talk? Talk." Marco took a step forward. His men moved with him, a synchronized advance. "Not here," Castellano gestured to the wine. "Warehouse. Inside. Just you two. We keep it civil. You think I'm stupid enough to walk into your trap? I think you care enough about the waitress to risk it." Castellano's smile widened. "Come inside, DeLuca. Let's discuss the terms of keeping everyone alive." Marco looked at Antonio, some silent communication passing between them. Antonio nodded almost imperceptibly. The extraction team was moving on Queens. This meeting was meant to last long enough for them to get Beth out. Marco just had to keep Castellano talking. "Fine, but my people stay alert. You try anything, this ends badly for everyone." Likewise. They walked toward the warehouse. Elena's legs felt like water, but she kept moving. Marco's hand hovered near her back, not touching but protective. Inside, the warehouse was vast and empty. Castellano's men formed a semicircle. In the center, a card table with 3 chairs. Like this was a business negotiation instead of a hostage situation. "Sit," Castellano invited. "Let's be civilized." They sat. Elena tried to control her breathing. Up close, Castellano's eyes were flat and cold. A man who'd seen everything and been impressed by nothing. "So," he said, leaning back. "Elena Rossi, the woman who ran 6 blocks for children she didn't know. Very heroic, very stupid." "Where's Beth?" Elena repeated. "You don't get to ask questions, sweetheart. That's not how this works." Castellano turned to Marco. "Here's the situation. You've been encroaching on my territories. South Bronx, parts of Queens. I've let it slide because open war is expensive. But now you're flaunting this one." He gestured at Elena, like some kind of statement. "Like you're showing the world that DeLuca takes in strays and makes them untouchable. She's not a statement. She's—" Marco stopped. "What? Family?" Castellano laughed. "After 3 weeks, come on, DeLuca. You're smarter than that." "Beth Santos," Marco said coldly. "Release her. Now. This is between us. Everything and is between us. That's the point. You can't just absorb civilians into your operation and expect no consequences." Castellano pulled out a gun, set it on the table casually. "So here's the deal. You back off the territories I mentioned. You pay reparations for my men you've killed this year. And you give me her." He pointed at Elena. "Excuse me?" Marco's voice dropped to something lethal. "You heard me. The girl. She works for me now. 6 months. We'll see how loyal she is when she's serving my interests instead of yours. Consider it insurance that you'll honor our agreement." "You're insane." "I'm practical. You've gotten too comfortable, DeLuca. Time to remind you that nothing is untouchable. Not your territories. Not your people. Not your new pet." Marco stood slowly. "That's never happening. Then your waitress friend dies. And I send her body to every newspaper in New York with a story about how Marco DeLuca's selfishness gets innocent people killed." Elena felt the room tilt. This was the play. Force Marco to choose between territory and her. Make him look weak either way. "There's a third option," Elena said. Both men looked at her. "You let Beth go. I stay voluntarily, not as a prisoner, as a neutral party. I verify that Marco honors whatever territorial agreement you make. You get your insurance. Marco keeps his dignity. Beth goes free." "Elena, no." Marco's voice was sharp. "It solves the problem," Elena continued, looking at Castellano. You wanted to prove that DeLuca can't protect everyone. Fine. Prove it. But Beth didn't ask for any of this. Let her go home. Castellano studied her with new interest. You'd volunteer? Just like that? For Beth's safety? Yes. Even knowing what I could do to you? You're going to threaten me either way. At least this way. Someone innocent goes free. No. Marco's hand was on Elena's arm now. This isn't happening. Antonio. His phone buzzed. He glanced at it. His expression changed. Problem, DeLuca? Castellano asked, amused. Marco's jaw tightened. He looked at Elena, something blazing in his eyes. Then he turned to Castellano. You don't have Beth Santos. Silence. My team just hit your queen's location. It was empty. She was never there. Marco's voice was controlled fury. This was never about the waitress. This was about getting me here. Away from my estate. Away from my daughters. Castellano's smile vanished. You're hitting my home right now, Marco continued, his phone buzzing continuously. While I'm here, that's the real play. Clever man. Not clever enough, apparently. Marco grabbed Elena's arm. We're leaving. Now. Guns came up. Castellano's men blocking the exit. Marco's men outside started moving, attracted by the commotion. Nobody's leaving, Castellano said. Not until we... The warehouse lights cut out. Darkness. Complete and total. Then gunfire. Elena hit the ground as Marco dragged her down. Bullets whined overhead. Someone was screaming. The darkness was alive with muzzle flashes and shadows and chaos. Stay down, Marco's voice in her ear. Don't move. But Elena's mind was racing. Marco's daughters. The estate. If Castellano was attacking there while they were trapped here, she felt for her phone. Found it. Hit the panic button. What are you doing? Marco hissed. Calling for help. My men are already... Not for you. For your daughters. The panic button connected directly to Antonio's command center. Wherever he was, he'd know she was in distress. He'd redirect resources. More gunfire. Closer now. Elena felt Marco's body covering hers, shielding her. His weight was solid, protective. We need to move, he said. Can you run? Yes. Then run. Back exit. 20 feet behind us. On 3. Marco. 1. More gunfire. Someone fell nearby with a wet thud. 2. Elena's whole body tensed. 3. They ran. Crouched low, moving through darkness. Elena's hands hit concrete, catching herself when she stumbled. Marco's grip on. Her arm was iron, pulling her forward. Behind them, the fight continued. Shouts in Italian. Return fire. The warehouse was a war zone. They burst through a side door into the night air. An engine roared. One of Marco's backup vehicles screeched to a stop beside them. Get in! Antonio shouted from the driver's seat. They piled in. The vehicle took off before the door was fully closed. Tires screamed. Behind them, the warehouse erupted with more gunfire. Status? Marco demanded. Estate is under attack. 8 men breached the perimeter. We've got them contained in the south garden, but it's active. Antonio drove like a demon, weaving through industrial streets. The girls are in the safe room. Maria's with them. But boss. What? One man got inside the house. We lost track of him in the confusion. Elena's blood turned to ice. There's someone in the house with your daughters. The safe room is impenetrable, Marco said, but his voice was tight. They can't get in. What if I knows the codes? What if someone on your staff? My staff is loyal. You said that about the perimeter security, and they still got breached. Elena was shouting now, fear making her voice sharp. Marco pulled out his phone, dialing. Maria. Status. A pause. His face went white. Marco? Elena grabbed his arm. Marco? What? Maria's not answering. The rest of the drive was a blur. 20 minutes that felt like hours. Antonio drove with terrifying speed, running red lights, taking corners that made the SUV tilt dangerously. When they finally reached the estate, it was chaos. Security vehicles everywhere. Armed men in tactical gear. The front gate was damaged, hanging open. Marco was out before the vehicle stopped moving. Elena followed, her heart in her throat. They ran through the mansion, past bullet holes in walls, past overturned furniture, past evidence of a fight that had moved through the house like a storm. The safe room was in the basement, a steel door with biometric locks. Marco's hands shook as he pressed his palm to the scanner. The door opened. Inside, Maria sat against the wall, blood seeping from a wound in her shoulder. Lucia and Sophia were huddled together in one wheelchair, Lucia's arms around her sister, both girls pale with terror, but they were alive. "Papa!" Lucia's voice broke on the word. Marco crossed the room in 2 strides, gathering both girls into his arms. His shoulders shook. Elena had never seen him cry, but she saw it now in the way he held his daughters like they were the only thing keeping him anchored to earth. Elena knelt beside Maria. "You're hurt." He got inside. Maria gasped. Got to the hallway outside the safe room. I had just gotten the girls inside when he appeared. I hit the panic seal. Locked us in. But he shot through the door, trying to break the lock. Got my shoulder. "Where is he now?" "Dead. Mr. Castellano's man. Antonio's team got him before he could breach the room. Paramedics appeared, rushing, to treat Maria. Security swept the room, checking every corner. Antonio gave orders rapid fire, coordinating cleanup and perimeter reinforcement. But Elena only saw Marco and his daughters. Saw the way Sophia was signing something repeatedly. Saw Lucia's tears. Saw Marco's face as he promised them they were safe. They were okay. He would never let anything happen to them. It was a promise he couldn't keep. They all knew it. But in that moment, it was enough. Later, hours later, when the estate was secured, and the police had been paid off, and the bodies had been removed, and Maria was in surgery, and the girls were finally, fitfully asleep, Elena found Marco in his study. He sat in the dark, a glass of whiskey untouched on his desk. "They're asleep," Elena said quietly. "Both of them. I stayed until they were out. Thank you." She entered the room, closing the door behind her. "Marco, you were right." His voice was hollow. "I can't protect everyone. I can't control everything. I built walls and hired guards and created protocols, and they still got inside. They still got close to my daughters." Elena crossed to him. "But they didn't succeed. Lucia and Sophia are safe. This time. What about next time? What about the time after that?" He finally looked at her. "How many times can I roll the dice before I lose?" "I don't know, but you can't lock them away forever. They need to live. They need to survive. They need both." Elena knelt beside his chair. "Sophia told me once that she feels like she's in prison. A safe prison, but still a prison. Is that really living?" Marco's hand clenched around the glass. "What would you have me do? Open the gates and hope for the best? I'd have you find a balance. Let them have lives while still protecting them. It's possible. You sound very certain for someone who almost died tonight." "I didn't die, and neither did they. And Beth." Elena paused. "Did you find her?" "Yes. She was never taken. Castellano faked the surveillance footage, used a look-alike. She's been safe at home the whole time, wondering why I had guards surrounding her building." Relief flooded through Elena. "So she's okay." "She's terrified and confused, but yes, okay." Marco set down the glass. "You put yourself at risk for nothing." "Not nothing. I put myself at risk to save a friend. That's always worth it. Even knowing what it cost? The attack on my home, my daughter's terror, Maria's injury? That's not on me. That's on Castellano." Elena's voice was firm. "He made these choices. He attacked. Don't you dare blame yourself or me for his evil." Marco stared at her. Then, slowly, he reached out and cupped her face. His thumb traced her cheekbone. "You're extraordinary," he said again. "Do you know that? You keep saying that, because it keeps being true." His eyes searched hers. "After Maria died, I shut down, focused entirely on protecting my daughters. I didn't let anyone in, didn't trust anyone, built walls around my heart that I thought were impenetrable. Marco, then you chased a wheelchair, and somehow, in 3 weeks, you broke through every defense I spent 3 years building." His voice was rough. "You made my daughters laugh. You made me feel something other than fear and responsibility. You made me remember what it's like to care about someone for reasons that have nothing to do with duty." Elena's breath caught. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I'm falling for you, and it terrifies me. Because everyone I love becomes a target. Everyone I care about gets hurt." His hand dropped. "You should leave, tonight, take the relocation offer, disappear before I get you killed." "No, Elena, no." She took his hand, holding it firmly. "I'm not running. I'm not hiding. I'm choosing to stay. I'm choosing this life, these girls, and..." She paused, gathering courage. "And I'm choosing you. You don't know what you're saying." "I absolutely know what I'm saying." Elena's voice was steady, despite her racing heart. "I've spent 3 weeks here. I've seen your world. I know it's dangerous. I know people will keep coming after you and your daughters. I know caring about the DeLuca family makes me a target." She leaned closer. "But I also know that Lucia's laugh makes everything else worth it. That Sophia's rare smiles are precious. That you're a good father who'd die for his children. That all of this is where I'm supposed to be." Marco's other hand came up, cradling her face. "If I let you stay, I'll spend every day terrified of losing you. Then we'll be terrified together." He kissed her. Gentle at first, almost hesitant, like he was afraid she'd disappear if he held on too tight. Then deeper, more certain, his hands tangling in her hair. Elena kissed him back, pouring 3 weeks of growing feelings into it. The fear, the care, the tentative hope that maybe, just maybe, she'd found a place to belong. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Marco pressed his forehead to hers. "Stay," he whispered. "Not for 3 months, not as a trial. Stay. Yes. Say it again. Yes. I'm staying." He kissed her again, and Elena felt the last piece of her old life fall away. She wasn't a struggling waitress anymore. She wasn't alone and drowning in debt and exhausted. She was Elena Rossi, who'd chased a wheelchair and found a family. The next morning, Elena woke in Marco's bed. The sun streamed through windows overlooking the estate grounds. Beside her, Marco slept deeply for the first time in who knew how long. She slipped out quietly, pulling on his shirt and padding barefoot down to the kitchen. The girls were already there, having breakfast with a very bandaged Maria, who insisted she was fine despite doctor's orders to rest. "Elena," Lucia's face lit up. "You're still here. I thought maybe after last night you'd—" "I'm not going anywhere," Elena said firmly. She pulled up a chair beside them. "I promised, remember?" Sophia studied her face, then signed something. Maria translated. "She says you and her father both look different this morning, happier." Elena felt heat rise to her cheeks. "We had a long talk last night." "Just a talk?" Lucia grinned mischievously. "Lucia Maria DeLuca, eat your breakfast." That's what Maria always says when she wants to avoid a question. "Smart woman." Elena ruffled Lucia's hair. Marco appeared in the doorway, already dressed for the day. His eyes found Elena's immediately, something warm and possessive in his gaze. "Good morning," he said. "Morning." The girls looked between them, then at each other, then burst into giggles. "What?" Marco asked. "Nothing, Papa," Sophia signed with a smile. "Nothing at all." The next few weeks brought changes. Marco restructured his security, fired people who'd failed during the attack, promoted those who'd succeeded, made it clear that his family's protection was paramount above everything else. The Castellanos retreated. They'd lost men in the warehouse fight and failed in their assault on the estate. The balance of power had shifted, but more than the external changes, there were internal ones. Marco smiled more, laughed at dinner, let his guard down in small but significant ways. The girls blossomed with Elena's presence. They ventured out more, always with security, always carefully. But they went to museums and concerts and parks, lived like children instead of prisoners. And Elena and Marco navigated their new relationship carefully. Stolen moments in his study, late-night conversations after the girls were asleep, learning each other's histories and hopes and fears. "I never thought I'd do this again," Marco admitted one night, holding her on the terrace under the stars. "Fall for someone, risk that kind of vulnerability. Was it worth it?" Elena asked, her head on his chest. "Ask me in 50 years. 6 months after Elena moved into the estate, Marco made it official. The girls knew first. He asked their permission in a family meeting. "We want to make Elena a permanent part of this family," he told them. "Not just as your companion, but as, are you getting married?" Lucia interrupted, bouncing in her wheelchair. "If she says yes, she'll say yes," Sophia signed confidently. "She loves us. She loves you. Why wouldn't she say yes?" "That's what I'm hoping," he proposed in the library, surrounded by books and memory and the life they'd built together. Got down on one knee despite Lucia and Sophia hiding behind a shelf, watching everything with barely contained excitement. "Elena Rossi, will you marry me?" Elena looked at the ring, a simple band that somehow caught the light perfectly, looked at Marco's hopeful, terrified expression, looked at the girls peeking around the bookshelf, Lucia giving her enthusiastic thumbs up. "Yes," Elena said. "Absolutely yes." The girls erupted from their hiding spot, wheeling over to join the celebration. They huddled together, all four of them, laughing and crying and planning a future that felt impossible and perfect all at once. Antonio found them like that an hour later, still talking excitedly about wedding plans. "Boss, we have the final report on the Castellano situation. Later, Marco said, his arm around Elena. Sir, later, Antonio. I'm with my family. Antonio smiled despite himself. Yes, sir. After he left, Lucia looked up at Elena and Marco. So does this mean we can call you Mom now? Elena's throat tightened. If you want to. We want to, Sophia signed. We've wanted to for months. We just didn't know if we were allowed. You're allowed, Elena managed through tears. You're absolutely allowed. The wedding was small, just family and close associates. Maria stood as matron of honor, her shoulder healed. Antonio walked Elena down the aisle since her parents couldn't. The girls were flower girls, decorating their wheelchairs with ribbons and causing a spectacle that made everyone laugh. Marco cried when Elena appeared, actual tears streaming down his face as she walked toward him in a simple white dress that Lucia and Sophia had helped pick out. You're beautiful, he whispered when she reached him. You're not bad yourself. They said their vows surrounded by people who'd become family through choice rather than blood, promised to love and protect and choose each other every single day. When Marco kissed his bride, the girls cheered so loudly that the officiant laughed. Ladies and gentlemen, he announced, Mr. and Mrs. Marco De Luca, and their daughters, Lucia and Sophia. Not stepdaughters, not adopted daughters, just daughters, family. That night, after the celebration, after the girls were finally asleep and the guests had gone home, Marco and Elena stood on their terrace looking out over the estate. I chased a wheelchair, Elena said softly. That's all. One instinctive decision. And changed everything. Marco pulled her closer. Changed my daughters' lives. Changed my life. Changed yourself. Do you think... Elena paused. Do you think I'd do it again? If I knew where it would lead? Marco was quiet for a moment. I don't know. Would you? Elena thought about it. The danger, the fear, the night she'd almost lost everything, but also the laughter, the love, the family she'd gained. Yes, she said finally. Every single time. I'd chase that wheelchair every single time. Why? Because some things are worth the risk. Some people are worth fighting for. She turned in his arms, looking up at him. You taught me that. Your daughters taught me that. That love, real love, is always worth the leap. Marco kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. I love you, Elena De Luca. I love you too. They stood there in the darkness, holding each other, two people who'd found family in the most unlikely circumstances, a waitress who'd chased a wheelchair, a mafia boss who'd let his walls crumble, two broken girls who'd learned to trust again. And, somehow, impossibly, it had all worked out. Not perfectly, not without scars, not without the constant awareness that danger lurked at the edges of their happiness. But together, always together, that was enough. That was everything. 5 years later, Elena pushed a stroller through Central Park, while Lucia wheeled beside her, talking a mile a minute about her upcoming piano recital. Sophia followed, quieter but content, pointing out birds and flowers and the way the light filtered through the trees. In the stroller, 3-year-old Marco Jr. babbled happily, his dark eyes, his father's eyes, taking in everything with fascination. Mom, are you listening? Lucia asked. I'm listening. You want to play Chopin? And Dad said I could if I practice an extra hour every day. But Sophia thinks Debussy would be better for the acoustics in the concert hall, and I don't know who to believe. Why not play both? Lucia stopped her wheelchair. Mom, you're a genius. Elena laughed. I have my moments. They walked and wheeled through the park, just a family enjoying a beautiful day. To any observer, they looked normal. Mother with her children, enjoying the sunshine. Nobody would guess the security detail watching from strategic distances. Nobody would know that the woman pushing the stroller had once been a waitress who'd chased a thief 6 blocks. Nobody would suspect that this peaceful moment was carefully constructed and fiercely protected. But Elena knew, and she was grateful for every second of it. Her phone buzzed. Marco, coming home early. Miss you. Elena smiled and texted back. Miss you more. Bring dinner. Already ordered. See you soon. Love you. Love you too. Lucia read over her shoulder. Gross. You two are so mushy. Wait until you fall in love. Then you'll understand. I'm never falling in love. Too complicated. That's what I used to say, Elena said, ruffling her daughter's hair. Look how that worked out. They continued through the park, laughter and love and the promise of home waiting at the end of the day. Elena had chased a wheelchair and found everything she didn't know she needed, and she'd do it again, every single time. Because some stories don't start with once upon a time, Some start with a cry for help, a stranger's kindness, and the courage to run toward danger instead of away from it. And sometimes, those stories end with everything you never knew you wanted. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you loved this story, check out the other videos on your screen now. I think you'll really enjoy them. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next story.